7.5, 7.5, 10, money gets 7.5 and a 10, 7.50, money gets 10, money gets 7.5 and a 10, down 12.5.
Some of us are collectors of old tractors or cars, while a select few collect 16-ton traction steam engines, engines that expanded agriculture and took over from the oxen that plowed the fields over a century ago.
Today we're here at the Now Then Threshing Show at Now Then, Minnesota, just northwest of the Twin Cities metro area. We have about a dozen steam traction engines here at the showgrounds, both stationary and mobile gas engines as well. The history of steam really started out when farming agriculture started expanding. Back turn of the century, farmers needed to start running more acreage, get larger, and to do that they obviously needed more equipment. The invention of the steam engine, first really being pioneered for river travel, was being now moved over for both railroad as well as agricultural purposes.
The Wetter family farms were among a handful of collectors who fired up their boilers and pumped steam to husk corn and saw logs at the Now Then Threshing Show. Another had dug deep into the Republic River in Kansas to salvage his keepsake from an overturned barge, sunk in a flood 80 years earlier.
It was up on a river barge running a dredge pump. Flood in 1935 came through. Moorings broke loose on the barge. When it hit the shore on the other side, it bucked it into the river. So he had tried, like I say, 4 different times in his life. We got it, went down there, had a 760 John Deere backhoe crawler and a D7 Cat, dug it out, all kinds of trial and error, but ended up getting it out of the river. 7.5 years later, we fired it up for the very first time on April 22nd, 07. And from there, just kept on doing a little work on it. Still not quite done. We still need a canopy on it and a lot of little bugs to work out.
And then there's George Benson from Rogers, Minnesota, who has owned 7 steamers and keeps track of every nut and bolt, dime and dollar that he's ever invested.
Well, this is a Case traction steam engine, and this is a tender engine, not a bunker engine. And you can see that by the back of the tank, which is here, which is the only engine like that, because most steam engines have bunkers on the back of them rather than tenders. Okay, this engine is a 1909. It's good to preserve some of our old heritage. And for some of us, we really enjoy this, although steam engines are a very high ratio of expense. First of all, you have to have them tested by the state of Minnesota, and anything that you need for this engine, you cannot go to the hardware store and buy. You have to either go to a machine shop and have parts made, or you have to make the parts yourself because you can't get anything for them. You can get piping, tubes, and grease and oil and that kind of stuff, but if you need a major part, you have to have the parts made. So they're expense, but they're a real fun hobby.
It's how they work that fascinates both owners and the casual observer. The steam engine is quite similar to a modern-day car, except the parts are all out in the open, easy to see.
You can definitely tell with this the quiet power that steam is. This engine, is running at about probably half speed right now, but you can tell, total quiet. We're able to have a complete conversation standing right next to the engine. There aren't too many gas engines that you'd be able to say that about. All right, the piece actually spinning on the top there is called the governor, and so that's what actually controls your maximum rate of speed. And also when the engine is under load, it'll actually expand those 2 red balls. Moving down from that, well, you basically have the steam coming into it through the governor and then down right into this piston. This is the piston for the engine. The steam going into the back and then being exhausted out, giving you the power, the back and forth power of the engine, you would run your sawmill or your threshing machine. Moving to the back of the engine, you can see all the controls on top. Same type of controls like a manual car. The very nearmost control is just your forward and reverse and neutral. The middle one there we have is your throttle. So just like stepping on the gas in a car or pulling back the throttle in a tractor, same thing there. And on the very right-hand side, you have your clutch. And the clutch works in a lot of the same principles as modern clutches. So here we have the actual source of the power for these things. We're burning wood out here today, and we prefer the nice hardwoods like an oak. The firebox is completely jacketed in water, so there's water completely surrounding that. Boil that water, produce your steam, make pressure, makes the engine run.
For some collectors, like Shane Skelton, it's all about an international flavor, a flavor he savors through his own Irish brogue.
This engine was produced and it was shipped out to Chile and probably put into a sawmill around 1912 or so, and it worked continuously at that sawmill, literally on the side of a mountain in Chile, up until my understanding is 1998. My brother and I, we went to England. We drove the length of England to see it. So it's probably one of the most travelled engines on the planet, perhaps. England to Chile, Chile to England, England to Ireland, Ireland to England, and England to the United States. So I think I'm here for keeps. I'm not going anywhere. It's going to stay.
With 50 steam engines in his own possession, Shane's backyard in Burnsville, Minnesota is a curiosity for anyone born in this century.
There's so little of this stuff lying around. I mean, people today, they don't know how stuff works. They flip a switch, the light goes on, they push a button and the microwave does its thing. These things, I mean, they're so elemental. You've got water, you've got fire, you've got you've got the heat of the fire, which turns the water into steam, and that's used. And you can see, I mean, all the parts, everything is moving. You can see what stuff does. You know, the wrist pin is connected to the ankle pin and so on and so forth, so you can actually see what's going on. And what's my motivation? I think I'm just 98% crazy and 2% Irish, or is it the other way around?